But be doers of the word and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves and on going away immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If any think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. You could be seated.
So she looked at me with bored eyes and said, "I'm sorry, sir, your head is too big." And I thought to myself, how did she know that I was a preacher? I mean, come on. Let me back up about 24 hours and let me tell you the situation. My wife told me, "Hey, you remember we're going on this trip. You got your passport, right?" And I said, "No." And so that very moment, I fill out the application, I get my cashier's check, I run to get the passport photo, I add the extra check because we're going to have to expedite this thing because we're leaving on June 26th. I rush straight to the county clerk so I can drop off this application so I can get the passport so I can save the vacation that we're about to have. And I arrive at the county clerk's office, and I only had to wait for like 95 minutes. And I thought, this isn't so bad. And I take my application, and I take the check, and I take the passport, and I take the expedited check bonus, and I lay it down with the lady, and I say, "I am so glad that you were here today. This was not nearly as painful as I thought it was." And she said, "No, sir. This isn't where you drop off your application. This is where you make your appointment to drop off the application. Your appointment is July 1st. I mentioned the plane tickets that we already bought were June 26th, right? 24th? I don't remember, doesn't matter. Anyway, so I said, this is a problem. I'm going to ruin my wife's vacation. She said there's one place you can go in the county of Santa Clara where you can drop off that application that day, but you need to arrive early. And I said, how early? She said, very early. So 3:50 in the morning, I roll out of bed, I throw on a hoodie, I put on a hat, I skip the shower, I kind of bring my toothbrush to go kind of just wash everything off as I drive to this one place in the city of San Jose where I can drop off this application. When I get there, there's already 12 people in front of me in line. They only serve about 15 to 20 people a day, and I wait for 10 hours. And it's my turn finally, and I walk up to the desk, and I hand it to this woman that has done this 100 times in the last month. I give her my application, I give her my passport photo, I give her my check, I give her the expedited check, and I say, "You've saved my vacation, thank you." And she says, "Thank you." And I turn around to go, and she says, "Uh-oh. I'm sorry, sir. Your head is too big. The photo was wrong." And I thought to myself, I have to do this whole thing again, 10 hours tomorrow. This is crazy. She said, "Don't worry. We have a photo booth right over there. We can take a picture for you. It'll just cost you $50. And I'm like, whatever. Let's just do it. Did I mention the fact that I had just rolled out of bed, thrown on a hat, thrown on a hoodie? I hadn't done any hair combing, let alone any hair styling. Brothers and sisters, this is my passport photo for the next 10 years. And it's not so much that I was worried that they would let me go to Cambodia. I was sitting in Cambodia's passport line. I was worried if they're going to let me come back home. I mean, that's the kind of photo that should have numbers on the bottom of it, right? But what would inevitably happen is I would forget that that's my passport photo. And I would hand it to the most bored clerk that you've ever met in their life, and they would either do one of two things. They would either think in their head, this is a drug dealer, and we're going to send him to the back to search him, or this poor unfortunate soul. James says in his book that he's writing, "Be doers of the word and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. They're like those who look in a mirror and immediately forget what they look like." Now, there's this phenomenon that can happen. If you have brain damage to the back of your head, you experience this thing called visual agnosia. The layman's term is called face blindness. And basically what it means is you can see other people's faces, but because of the damage to your brain, you can't tell anybody apart. So you might walk up to somebody that you've known and seen your entire life and think that they're a complete stranger until you either hear them talk or watch them walk. Back at my church in California, where I was before I came to the amazing city of Abilene, I'm so grateful that we have a Chili's. I guess that's something. I had a friend at my church who was face blind. And the only way that he could tell who anyone was by watching their gait as they walked up. He couldn't tell looking at your face who you were, but he could tell by the way that you walked who was coming at you. And so my favorite thing in the world to do when I was walking up to my friend was to skip. That was just mean. Anyway, but you don't have to have brain damage to experience this. You know what this is like. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgot why you were there? You walk into your professor's office and you forget the question that you were supposed to ask them. The only way that you can figure out why in the world you walked into your kitchen is to turn back around and walk to your bedroom, and then you remember, oh, I wanted a sandwich. I had a roommate in college. He came in one day into our living room. He was holding a toilet plunger and an ice cream cone and had no idea why he had walked into our living room. I still want to know why he did that. James says, look at the complete and full-grown law. Look at the perfect law. Look at the mature law. It's the law that gives freedom. And persevere following that law. Don't look away. Don't look away, and you will be blessed. James says, don't stop trying. Even when you don't measure up to what you feel like God's standard is for you, don't stop trying. When God called you to do what He needs you to do in this world, He knew who you were. He knew that you would fail. God is way more interested in the number of times that you get up than He is in the number of times that you fall down. When I was here as a student, I auditioned for the ACU Step Squad. Does that still exist? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, it doesn't matter. It was a step squad. And I just thought I would audition for fun. But they had a rule at the time that said anyone that auditions gets in. I was the most terrible member of our step squad. In fact, they filmed a rehearsal, a practice, to show me exactly how terrible I was. And at that moment, I had a choice. I could either quit and walk away and just forget that this had ever happened, or I could try. God is not interested in the number of times that you fall down. As He is, He's interested in the number of times that you try again. What it means to be devoted to God is that it means that you try again, you get back up, you say you're sorry, you act in love, you do it again, you give it another shot. And I practiced that semester every day. I videotaped myself and watched myself. It was terrible. And I would love to tell you by the end of that semester that I was not terrible, but that would be a lie. But I was the second worst person on that step squad by the end of the year. Just don't give up. Because you look at the law and what you're going to feel is unworthy. That's what happens. That's where God's grace enters your life and makes you worthy. It makes you loved. James says, true religion before our God is to take care of widows and orphans in their distress and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Now, the reality is that you may not have a lot of widows or orphans in your world right now. But I think you do have a few people that you might be able to be kind to. The reason that James says this is because he's aware of how hypocritical the church really is. And I guarantee you, at my church, there is at least one hypocrite, because it's me. because I do things that I can't measure up to, because I say things that I'm not able to complete, because I want things that I really shouldn't have. I know there's at least one hypocrite in my church, and I imagine there's at least one in yours as well. But caring for widows and caring for orphans in the first century is not just caring for cute kids and old people. It's caring for the people that society forgot and abandoned. Nobody cared about orphans. Nobody cared about widows. And so James says, you want to have real spirituality? You want to really connect with God? Then care for somebody that nobody else even sees. Care for somebody else that's invisible. You're about to graduate eventually, probably, and you're going to be in a place where you're going to have a job. Or maybe you're going to be in a place where you have influence. And my guess is you're going to have way more power and influence than you possibly will imagine you could. And what I want to encourage you to do is to think about ways that when you're in that spot, you can look out for somebody in your world, in your system, that gets ignored. It might be as simple as learning the name of the janitor at your office. In fact, there's probably someone that cleans your dorm, that washes the food off of your plate. It may just be as simple as learning that person's name. And you step into, just for a moment, in our hypocritical lives, what James calls pure religion. And when you do, there is a beauty that I cannot describe. There's something happens there that I can't tell you what it is. The only thing you can do is experience it. And maybe it's just the difference between being kind and being nice. Do you know anyone that's been nice to you? I want you to think about that for a second. There's a difference between kind and nice. You've heard somebody say to you, you need to be nice to your cousin because she's family. You need to be nice to him because he's married to a VP in my company. We all know that nice guys finish last and nice guys get friend-zoned. But kind guys get the girls. And let me tell you why. It's because nice is a reaction to power. You are nice when you walk into your professor's office because they have control over your grade. You are nice to someone when they can give you something that you want, whether that's access to power or social capital, whatever it is. You're nice to somebody who can get you what you want. You are kind to those who have no ability to influence your life in any way. But what nice does is it creates a barrier because you're not legit. You're putting up a false self. It creates a barrier between you and that other person because you don't honestly, sincerely care for them. You just want what you want. Have you ever gone on a date and you thought, I'm going to be nice to someone so I can get what I want? Do you see the problem with that statement? It's a power play. It's a transaction that puts an appearance of love, but it's actually just a bargaining chip. And it might be the most antithetical thing we do to the gospel every week. But when you're kind, when I see you for who you are, and I'm going to love you no matter what, out of my authentic self, it's not because I want something from you, it's not because I expect to get something from you, but because that's who God calls me to be. That can change the world. What James considers pure religion is to love those invisible people who have no power in our culture. And so this week, what I want to challenge you to do is quite simple. You're going to have a moment where you want something. Instead of being nice, choose to be kind and see what happens. May the power of God's glory, who fills this room with His Spirit, may the power of Jesus Christ, who has bought you with His love, fill you with courage this week as you go in peace. Have a great week.